You're watching Beyond Markets. Welcome. I'm Esther Awoniyi. Many thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll discuss the state of security in Nigeria. As always, you can join today's conversation with the hashtag Beyond Markets, and you can send tweets to my Twitter handle too at Esther Awoniyi. Now, the 14th of April marks the 5th year since the abduction of 276 girls from the government secondary school in Chibok Town in Borno State, and 112 girls are still being held by Boko Haram. Onyekachi Adekoya, Managing Director, PR24 Nigeria, joins me to discuss the state of security in Nigeria. Thank you, Adekoya, for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning.
We're going to talk about, a number of issues, within the security space. But let's start with, recently we've had that there's a spate of extrajudicial killings by the Nigeria police, by some officers of the Nigeria police force, and then of course there's still the issue of Boko Haram. We hear in the news every day how the military continues to combat, tackle Boko Haram militants. But let's start with this 50th anniversary. it's still a sad one,
yes,
but it's 5 years later since the Chibok girls have been missing. And President Buhari was commenting recently, and he sort of rekindled hopes that the girls will be rescued. He said that there's still some strategies that are being employed to bring them back home. He said a number of options are on the table. We're not exactly sure. I guess they're playing their cards close to their chest right now in terms of how those options that they're considering or taking that are on the table for them. But what is your perspective? What are our options now? Because we know that in the past there have been ransoms. Some ransom have been paid for some girls, but we're not sure what the strategy is this time.
Yeah. Well, I think the government is saying so many things at the same time. On the one hand, the government is saying it's going to be difficult to rescue the girls. On the other hand, you've seen a government, an APC government, which is trying to be a bit more responsive to the yearnings of the people. You will see the government's reaction to the extrajudicial killings in these few days, in the advent, should I say, of the new administration coming in. So they would it's suggested that there's perhaps a bit more effort being put into showing some level of responsiveness to the people. So on the one hand, the president has said it's going to be extremely difficult, but the government will continue to try to see what they can do. On the other hand, you must also sell hope a bit to the people and sell some hope to the parents of the kidnapped girls. But if you look at the stories that has been flying around the Chibok girls, the fact that the Ministry of Women Affairs was supposed to have a help desk for the families, which is non-existent according to reports. So there's nowhere the families can go to access information on what's happening. The Bring Back Our Girls campaign group have been trying to put pressure on government to get these girls out. Some effort is being made, but my own personal assessment is even if we get the girls back, at what state, in what condition would they be?
But do we know if the government is still relying heavily on intelligence? Because that is one arm of, the investigation, or just trying to, part of efforts to bring back these girls that would be really instrumental for government efforts. We don't hear anything. Do you think that the government prefers to keep that information and maybe until they're confident of a win, before that is announced?
Well, the clandestine nature of intelligence gathering, will suggest that you wouldn't hear firsthand when efforts are being made. But I know that this past government and this government has also spent a lot of money and effort in trying to bring back the girls. I don't want to be a sadist, but I'm not very hopeful. There's been a number of shellings, sporadic gunfires in and around where those girls are being held, and know that Boko Haram doesn't really stay in a particular location for too long. So they've been moving and the government has been hitting at them. So it's also possible that some of those girls may have been lost. That's a sad reality, which perhaps may eventually play out. So we don't know the state of those girls. We don't know if they're going to come back. We know that efforts are being made. We also know that some people around the sectors of power also make merchandise of government and government's good intentions or lack of intentions, whatever the case is. But there are people around the corridors of power who benefit from this kind of scenarios. So someone will come and say, for example, we can negotiate, we need XYZ funds to go in and start a conversation, you need to release this amount for goodwill. So some values being exchanged, but we're not seeing so much in terms of some tangible yields to those value being exchanged.
Speaking about negotiation, and I know that they've used a negotiator in the past.
Yes.
Do you think that at this point, because so much time has passed, 5 years, the government will be willing at this point to, and it's possible that it's actually one of the options on the table,
yes,
to pay money to get these girls back, if that presents itself?
So I think when you deal with the government, you're dealing with one person. There's been so much that has happened in the past. In some quarters, there's been some issues of mistrust. Some other quarters, you're having to deal with aid from international organizations. So a lot of water, if I may say, has gone under the bridge. Whether money will be paid is yet to be seen. Whether money has been paid, we have not been told. But that effort is ongoing, yes. My main concern is it's 5 years down the line, 5 years.
And because it's been 5 years,
yes,
5 years, what we've also heard is that it's possible that they may not even be in the country. I mean, the Chad, Cameroon border, that's a territory that we know that the Boko Haram uses a lot. So does that make it a lot more harder for the government?
Yes, so that's a very fair point you make. You see, when you look at the map of the north, just at the point where Chad, Niger meets Nigeria, around the Lake Chad basin, you have a lot of ungoverned spaces. And what Boko Haram would do, and there are two sects of Boko Haram. There's a set that operates particularly out of Lake Chad into Borno, into Adamawa, and sometimes into Yobe and back. There's another sect that operates just somewhere off that axis. Okay. So for me, it's really difficult to place a handle on where the girls are, if they are still alive, in what condition they are currently, and what state of mind they are right now, and so that's why you hear the president, he's a bit cautious. He's not selling so much hope. He has said it is very difficult, but the government will continue to try. But it's, yes, we should focus, but it's been the Chibok girls. What's the level of security around the schools in the Northeast? Prior to these elections, the government had announced that, Boko Haram had been dealt with, schools are now reopening in the Northeast, in and around the Northeast. But what's the level of security provisions we're seeing? Over 2-3 weeks.
We haven't heard of any incidents
around schools, we have not heard. But I think it was 2 weeks back, about a week ago, we heard there was an onslaught on Damaturu. An attempted attack on Damaturu, some parts of Potiskum also. So it's a bit of a back and forth between the military and the Islamic jihadists. So the place is still not fully, the insurgency is not fully suppressed. Okay, so and schools are reopening. So while we talk about the Chibok girls, what's the state of security around the schools in the Northeast? That would be another point of interest.
Now, for the militants themselves, so what's been in the news recently is this joint military action by Nigeria and Chad to clear
yes.
that Chad basin area, and the Nigerian military, I get the sense that they're succeeding. I mean, based on some of the news,
the reports
just recently, this one recent one says that a military action left 27 militants dead. But what I'm trying to bring out here is what the military is fighting with currently. Two factions of Boko Haram, one the Albanawi-led Boko Haram, and of course the Shekau. The Albanawi has pledged allegiance to ISIS West Africa. We know, that's what reports say, is that he's getting support from ISIS West Africa, and his own strategy is to hit government and military targets, while Shekau focuses on soft targets.
Yes.
But do you think that makes it a lot more difficult for the military, having this this splintered two groups now with two different strategies? But still operating in the same Borno, Maiduguri, sometimes surrounding states?
No, not necessarily. We have one of the most respected infantry fighting men in the world. We can't say the same for their level of equipment, but in terms of their courage, their gallantry, and their approach to even battle, I think we have a well-respected army. It's just they may not be well-resourced. Now, Al-Bawani Shekaru faction, yes, let's look at the ISIS-led Al-Bawani faction. Let's focus on their modus operandi. The ISIS-backed Boko Haram is more militaristic in their approach. They understand military strategy, and they can see firsthand what the Nigerian army is trying to do. What caused this flare-up was that sometime last year, the Chief of Army Staff decided to create forward operating bases in and around the Lake Chad axis. And, you know, those forward operating, as they are called, forward operating bases, were those bases they were going to use to launch attacks to cage in ISIS or Boko Haram. So what they saw was, they saw what was coming. They then made concerted efforts to begin to mass attack one base at a time. So if you recall, cast your mind back to sometime mid last year, coming into third quarter, fourth quarter last year, there were insistent attacks on those forward operating bases. And the Nigerian army lost equipment, they lost soldiers, they even lost morale. Now, in military strategy, when your enemy begins to second guess himself, then perhaps in the war of propaganda, the other side may be gaining upper hand. So we've seen that the military has suffered significant losses. Perhaps they underestimated the response they were going to get from the al-Bawani-led Boko Haram group. So we've seen a re-strategizing from the part of the military. We've seen a change in tactics and efforts. We've seen also the military beginning to just let's leave it at a change in tactics. So they're beginning to hit at them in ways also. It may take Boko Haram some time to readjust. Okay. But so far, I would think that going by the reports we're getting, the momentum is on the side of the Nigerian army for now.
Now, the multinational joint task force came with a lot of promise, and we know that they've been through several battles. But would you say that in terms of their impact, we're getting a positive impact just from the existence and the operations of this group?
There are challenges, but overall assessment, yes, the impact has been positive. But remember that war is expensive. Nigeria is the richest state, if I may say, within that axis that is involved in the war. So the onus it would seem would fall more on Nigeria to fund and spend more, even in the multinational joint task force. Why you need the multinational joint task force is that you have them operating in and out. It's like a transnational crime thing. So you need a joint task force that can go in between those borders and chase them. But what we have seen is that Nigeria suffers more. The city centers of Niger, of Chad, are far-flung from the theater of war. So Nigeria has more at stake because they are operating deep within our territory, coming even into Nigeria to the point of coming deep into Adamawa. You understand? So the challenge is with us some more to spend a bit more. Adekoya,
we're going to take a short break. Well, thank you for your time so far. We'll take a short break and we'll come back to pick up from where we left off. I've been speaking to Onyekachi Adekoya as Managing Director, PR24 Nigeria, looking at the state of security in Nigeria. If you're just joining us, Onyekachi Adekoya, Managing Director, PR24 Nigeria, is with me today, and we're discussing the state of security in Nigeria. Thank you, Adekoya, for your time so far. Let's move on to other issues of security within the country. What we've seen, what's been in the news recently, has been the extrajudicial killings of citizens by some members of the Nigerian police force, particularly here in Lagos. The IGP, the acting IGP, was in Lagos recently, and he said he wasn't actually meant to come now, but he had to come because to come talk about this and address the issue. And he said since January till now, there have been 4 incidences of such, and he says that he feels like it's time to take drastic steps to curb this. But I'd like you to hear your own perspective, because the relationship between the Nigerian citizens and the police hasn't been a very pleasant one. It's been quite frosty, yes. Especially with the SARS incident, the incidences that we've had in the past, the End SARS campaign that has pitted the Nigerians against security forces, especially the police. But let's hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think we should commend the efforts of the IGP, the acting IGP. For once, there seems to be a breath of fresh air within the police force. Sad I have to call it a police force. Some of us will argue they should be called the Nigerian Police Service. Not much the IG can do, really. He's only done the best he can do, which is to come down to Lagos, show face a bit, and give marching orders to the CP, the area commanders for once, the DPOs, which is what I would have done, to say that because the police is structured along the lines of divisions, there's no part of Nigeria that doesn't have a division. Okay, so we're broken into divisions for effective policing. Every division has a divisional police officer. And from the new police policy, the minimum rank a divisional police officer should be is a chief superintendent of police. So you have at each division, the hem of each division, a senior police officer managing their affairs. You cannot cross move from a division to another division to operate, except you first register your presence at the division, you state your business, then from there you can move. So effectively, what the IG has said is, I will hold the most senior officer responsible for any incident in any part of Nigeria. I know who to hold. Now, the divisions answer to the area commanders. You may have 5, 6, 4, 3, or 5, 6, 7 divisions under an area commander. Okay, so every division officer also answers to a senior officer, who then answers to another senior officer. So the police has a structure which ideally should cover the length and breadth of this country. And in terms of accountability and responsibility, we know who to hold, when to hold, and where to hold.
Yeah, but is this but before now,
yes,
there haven't exactly been information in terms of disciplinary action being taken against those area police officers,
yes,
at least being made public, because I know they're trying to, because it says, they set up their own committee and they do it in-house.
Yes.
And, if he's found guilty, whoever is found guilty is, dismissed from the force,
yes,
and is also charged with murder, and or depending on the crime or the offense. But that usually isn't in the news. We don't hear that. So I'm thinking that is something that is a big discouragement to everybody, to Nigerians.
It's a matter of emphasis. It's a matter of emphasis and governance. The police has a police service commission, which is operational. Now, by our constitution, we should have a police council. The police council should be made up of the 36 state governors, plus the president, plus the IGP. And that council is a council of the people that manages the police affairs and oversees them day to day. Not day to day as in sit in office, but periodically they can oversee what's happening and take certain decisions. But that council is not there. That's one. The current police structure we have is a structure we inherited. The Police Act of 1943 brought into force the Nigerian police. The implementation started in 1944. This is 2019. We have a relic of the past, and which is why the National Assembly did pass a Police Reform Act. Now, if you take time to go through the new proposed bill, you can see a lot of emphasis on accountability. Accountability, responsiveness to people, and a total enshrinement of human rights values. And sanctions and incentives clearly spelled out. And all we're waiting for is the presidency to assent to that bill.
Even with that, because yes, I'm thinking that the issue of reorientation of the officers themselves is one thing to have a law. Many of them, I think it's quite clear that a police officer knows that he shouldn't use, at least you use a live ammunition on someone you're trying to stop, or just, and then the person ends up dying. I don't. You don't need a law to let you tell you as a policeman that you shouldn't kill.
I agree. The issues here are two-pronged. The first issue is orientation. Yes, I quite agree. You look at the law, the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law itself that brought the police force into place, it didn't bring and set up a police force that would be community-friendly, as it were. It's a force that was set up to be brutal, suppressive, oppressive, and to safeguard the interests. Even though
the slogan is to serve and protect?
Even though, that's why we've said, in the new, you are now talking about reorientation. Some of us are even calling it for a total re-engineering of the Nigerian security architecture. And I explain what I mean. You can see through and through the hard stance and the loss of emphasis on subtle nuances of state policing. We are too hard in our approach. It's further emphasized by the weapons the police carry. In most civil societies, you shouldn't see a policeman with an assault rifle. The AK-47 is not a people-friendly rifle. It's an assault rifle. Now the IGP is talking about using of tasers and storm guns.
I heard him say that, but he said in the long term, and I'm wondering why long term?
He has to say that in the long term, because if you look at the 2019 budget as passed, the police would not get more than 340-something billion.
Yeah, but if the police trust, if the police trust fund comes into...
I will come to the trust fund. 90% of that 300-something billion will go into recurrent expenditure. The remaining 10% should go and fund capex. That 10% they would not get, usually they don't get, according to reports, up to 4%. So when he said in the long term, I think what the IGP did was to be smart about it, to throw the idea out there, to say, as some of us are saying, if a man is carrying an AK-47 and he has to respond to an incident without making an excuse for the police, he will use his AK-47. If he has a stun gun, and the principle of force continuum, where you apply force as force becomes necessary, the first thing you warn verbally, you can bring out a stun gun. The next thing, you can bring out your rifle, but then you shoot not to kill but to maim. But there has to be a principle to the application of force. Apart from your orientation, because you can't put something on nothing, the system has to be re-engineered. I think Nigeria is ripe for a national security advisor who is not military.
But the police reform bill itself should take care of...
It comes back to what we're saying. Who's the one advising the president on issues of national security and the issue of state on security? An ex-military person. When you put a military man in civil matters, his response will be hard. We must have a policy-first approach to national security and have somebody at the helm of affairs who is leading and advising the president in the right direction. There's 21st century policing. We are far from the emphasis we should be having on issues of security.
You know, we have just 4 minutes left.
Yes.
For the police trust fund bill, what I like about it is that there's going to be contributions from federal, state, local governments, and the private sector in funding the police. Now, on paper, on the face of it,
yes,
that sounds very encouraging and looks very good.
Here we go again. Here we go again. That's why when we talk about ease of doing business, it doesn't make any sense. I'm a taxpayer. My company pays tax. You tax on ITF. You tax on ETF. There's NSITF. There's all those funds there. The issue is not about the fund. It's about state policing.
You don't think that if the police, if they're properly equipped, if they're given those tasers and those stun guns or pepper sprays or whatever, you know, and retrained
yes,
to know that, okay, let these be your first line of, you know, response before
yes,
you pull out, you know, the big guns, as it were. I'm thinking that will go a long way.
What I think is that the police has to now look at itself and do some soul searching. Perhaps it is time for us to begin to bring private security professionals into the mix. We can
as part of the training process or capacity?
You can train, but you know it is said that culture will eat strategy for breakfast.
No, because that's what the IGP has been, the acting IGP has been laying emphasis
there is
on.
A culture that seeks
retraining.
There's a culture that seeks to perpetuate itself. I grew up in the barracks, in the military barracks. So there's a culture of, God bless the big man. There's a culture there of what they see as the norm. Now, I say that Nigerian security problems and the whole structure would not be changing. It would take us 10 years. 10 years of concerted, deliberate efforts to change the narrative, to change the orientation, to change the tooling. You can look at our police officers, for example. They go out, they don't have bulletproof vests. If they have bulletproof vests, they have vests, no Kevlar in it. If there's Kevlar in it, there's no strike plate in it. When was the last time we actively, as a nation, tooled the policemen? When was the last time we bought them weapons and phased out some weapons that have been in service for over 20 years? When you come into street police and intelligence gathering, you must be approachable. You go to other climes, you see policemen with service pistols. Our own policemen carry AK-47. So there are a lot of issues. The Police Trust Fund, I feel, is another burden on the private sector and on the people, I think. What the government needs to do is to break the responsibility for policing back to the communities, back to the states.
No, but that has been quite controversial because everybody seems to focus on the negatives of it. I mean, state governments.
What are the positives of the current system we have?
State governments, for instance, using it as their own personal.
So you can look at what happens in the elections. The state in power uses the influence and apparatus of states to the party in power to its own benefit. To some extent, some will argue. So how are we worse off? Look at what happened in Rivers State. How are we worse off if we do what is right? The state governor in Zamfara resigned the other day from being the CSO. What did he say? He said he has nothing to do with security because he does not control the apparatus of state. The the military system, successive military junta, and the history, the checkered history we have with the military, is what has caused this unitaristic approach to security, where power must come to the center. What the British like to do is to break down chain of command to where command is needed right there on the field. You cannot hold chain of command at the center and expect not to drop the ball in certain local
Adekoya,
areas.
we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you so much for talking to us. Very insightful then. We thank you for your contribution and your time on the show today. I've been speaking to Onyekachi Adekoya. He's the Managing Director of PR24 Nigeria, and we've been looking at the state of security in Nigeria. Well, that's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can watch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of the show on our website at cnbcafrica.com. I'm Esther Awoniyi. Bye for now.